We're firing the main engines, cocktails, carrying the Wizard X and the WizScan Ultra P off into orbit. And to separate the shroud, which has exploded away from the main spacecraft, Lena Kerbin stays outside just in case she is needed to perform a rescue or anything of that nature as Kerbin Duna leaves the station. And you join us as Kerbin Duna lets go of the WizStar 1 research platform and drifts away from the station, controlled only by the jets, the reaction control system in her pack. Kerbin Duna, of course, like all of the Kerbmates, is no stranger now to EVA, having performed this many times during the last few months in orbit, as they have practiced the various skills and techniques they will require, or may require, during the Duna 1 and a bit's planned mission to the red or sort of orangey planet. That is yet to come, of course. Now Kerbin Duna's task is to retrieve the supplies sent up by the TV executives and producers from down below. There they are, just operating the lights in order to turn on the cameras and provide a better view for everyone watching the show down below. And she's opened the container, and look at all of those wonderful supplies sent up from below. We've got powered screwdrivers, wrenches there, look as well, explosives. Kerbin Duna grabs the explosives eagerly, very eagerly indeed. Some reading material, some batteries, and what have we got in the second container here? Let's take a quick look in the inventory. Ah, yes, many lights with integrated cameras and other such goodness, because of course the WizStar 1 was sent up, although its primary mission was to test life support. The reality TV show prelude to the Duna 1 and a bit show that has been running aboard has actually proved extremely successful, and the mission controllers below, the TV executives, have decided that adding more camera equipment to the outside can only be a good thing. Of course, this is also an excellent test for Kerbin Duna on orbit procedures. That does not seem to have worked, does it? In fact, the object clearly is not attached to the station and is just floating freely. Kerbin Duna making the situation worse by pushing it towards the solar panels, of all things. Kerbin Duna, of course, not the brightest spark, although she was selected via an extremely rigorous selection criteria. Now she has managed to figure out how to hold the wrench that was sent up, a tool for attaching and detaching small parts. And somehow Kerbin Duna manages to trigger the inherent explosive nature of almost all Kerbal technology and destroys the battery outright. However, she herself appears to be unharmed, and she is making another attempt now to attach it. Now, at the suggestion of Kerbin, she has actually grabbed hold of the ladder so that she has a stable platform from which to work. But once again, simply placing the light against the hull and letting go doesn't seem to be working for Kerbin Duna. Perhaps the reading material sent up by the TV producers will shed some light on it. Look at that, the Kerbal Inventory System User Guide. What a terribly useful thing to have received. Kerbin Duna now settles in for a nice read whilst dangling off the side of a space station, hurtling in orbit around the planet Kerbin. Having a quick read through the bits that confuse her, she will of course have a little bit of a conversation with Kerbin, the one really well qualified Kerbmate aboard the station, and hopefully between the two of them they will finally be able to figure out how to actually attach various objects to the outside of the station so that they can complete the mission and earn the bonus snacks that are on offer for doing so. Alright, armed with her newfound knowledge, Kerbin Duna tries once again, making sure she has the wrench in hand. She takes the illuminator and drags it out of her inventory, and then by simply orientating it correctly and using the tool, she is able to successfully attach it to the outside of the WizardStar 1 station. Look at that! We've done it! We've done it! We've successfully attached a small piece to the exterior of the craft. Hold on, what's Lena? Is this Lena Kerbin just drifting through space? Lena Kerbin is off structure, well off structure, in fact, just drifting uncontrolled. She has come to her senses, look, and is now returning back to the WizStar 1. Nobody even noticed that she was missing, and this perhaps is a sign of some fractures in the group, in the Kerb mates. Lena Kerman, of course, does spend quite a bit of time alone in the command pod operating the scientific instruments, and has been a little bit distant from the rest of the Kerbinauts. It is unclear why exactly she was drifting so far from the station, or what her intentions were, but she does appear to be returning now. Look, nobody even noticed that she was missing. Gemby Kerman looking up in surprise as Lena turns up, and look, they're having a little bit of a confab now, helmet to helmet. What are they talking about? It's not clear. However, Lena Kerman is now going into the Wistar 1. Perhaps she will have to explain this to the Kerb mates, or maybe they will all just kind of eat snacks and forget about it. Gemby Kerman, of course, doesn't care. She is far more interested in continuing her external activities, attaching things to the station, retrieving the various stuff that has been sent up by the TV producers, and generally getting on with the task at hand. And therefore she is back once again flying towards the Wiscan. In fact, having read through the manual, she has had a cunning idea. Obviously, you know, she's only skim-read the manual, as is her way, but she is convinced that using the powered screwdriver she can detach the entire inventory container and place it aboard the station. However, she doesn't actually have any ability to carry it, as she has now realized. But not to be deterred, she puts the call into Patlas Kerman to bring the two craft closer together so that she might be able to reach from where she is to the Wistar and simply bolt on the container, because that sounds like a lot less effort than flying back and forth to empty everything. And so Patlas fires up the thrusters aboard the Wistar 1 and begins the delicate procedure of bringing the two spacecraft ever closer together. The thrusters firing as the two spacecraft speed silently above the planet Kerbin. Just a few meters separating the two craft now, Patlas Kerman demonstrating all of his exceptional piloting skills. He is, of course, the only experienced and qualified Kerbinaut amongst them, and he is paying for himself right now as he slides the craft in. Gemby Kerman, now convinced the two craft are close enough together, detaches the storage module and tries to reach across, but of course she is not quite so skilled or experienced and fails to arrest her own motion, making the job 10 times more difficult than it needs to be. Not being the most patient of girls in Kerbin, she has just let go of it and let it drift freely in space. It is now not attached to either spacecraft, and Gemby Kerman is having a horrendous time trying to nudge it down close enough to the Wistar 1 to be able to attach it. Quickly she whips out the manual again and tries to figure out just what exactly is going on, what the problem is. Part of the problem seems to be that it needs to attach to a node rather than just a surface. So Gemby Kerman flies back in once again and takes a little look. What are the options here? It'll attach... Look, it will attach to the bottom of a heat shield by the looks of it. Which is probably not the most sensible place to put it, but if it will go there and nowhere else, as none of the TV producers envisaged this scenario, nobody had actually bothered to create any dedicated attach points for these sorts of things aboard the Wistar 1. It was never planned for. Unsurprisingly enough, Gemby Kerman now trying to nudge the thing towards the heat shield to use that one attachment location that appears to be operational. It appears to work, showing actually a remarkable degree of deftness and control. Not quite close enough. The two are just a little bit too far apart. Gemby Kerman trying once again. Unfortunately, the container probably weighs more than she does. But undaunted, she struggles on, burning ever more of her EVA propellant as she tries to control the ever-tumbling objects, coming close at times, but frustratingly just out of reach. A new plan is attempted. Gemby Kerman decides to use one of the attachment points, one of the anchor points that came up in the containers, to attempt to strut the two things together. However, that also proves to be a little on the tricky side, as the struts have a maximum length and a maximum angle that they're able to attach at. Kerbin Duna, of course, is not the calmest or most patient individual, despite the extensive psychological testing that didn't occur. She gets frustrated, and naturally when she gets frustrated, she blows something up. This is becoming a clear personality trait. However, she is nothing if not determined, and a full 17 minutes of battling with it later, she finally gets it close enough to attach. Ah, I've done it! I've done it! It's attached! It's attached! Yeah! Kerbin Duna clearly thrilled to bits, although, I mean, the attachment is a little bit suspect, as it does appear to be floating a good couple of feet away from the actual heat shield. Presumably there are some kind of, like, long screws drilled into the heat shield. Hopefully that won't compromise its effectiveness. Of course, the escape pods there, completely untested. Anyway, right, Kerbin Duna decides to load up the attached inventory pod there, inventory container, with all the stuff she's got, refills her EVA propellant once again. She's already had to do this more than once during her extensive EVA procedure, much longer than any previous EVA she's ever attempted. And in fact, she decides that it is time to head inside for a little bit of a break and some snacks. And as she reboards the Wistar 1, Patlas takes control and flies it back into formation, as they have drifted quite far from the target in that time. Having learnt their lessons, Patlas Kerbin this time brings the Wistar 1 in very, very close, orientating the two spacecraft in such a way that the heat shield is within, or will be within, range of the second container to be moved in a single step. That at least is the plan. That is what is going to happen. Alright, Kerbin Duna, you're up once again. You have to depart on your EVA. You are the only one who is experienced in performing these procedures, and so despite the fact that you are tired, there you go, look, bam, bish bash bosh. No messing around. Once again, it is attached magically, but attached it is. And now we can close up those cargo bays, and Kerbin Duna, satisfied with such a, that was almost underwhelming. It was so easy when done correctly. She returns to the airlock and reboards the Wistar 1. And so, with the successful delivery of the components to the Wistar station, the TV executives command the WizScan Ultra P to resume its course for a polar orbit and its primary mission of performing an orbital survey scan. The engines roaring into life once again on that massive second stage booster, raising the apoaps, a procedure which the TV executive who completed bits of a correspondence course on orbital mechanics is convinced is important and will help in order to allow them to transition to a polar orbit. Now the inclination change procedure is plotted in. And there we go, that is the final resolution for the maneuver, and this should provide a pretty good polar orbit. It's not perfectly circular, but I don't think it has to be, and there is so much delta V on this vehicle that it can easily be circularized after the fact anyway. Once again, firing up that massive booster rocket, it's impressive just how much fuel and how much delta V is left in this booster stage. It leaves a lot of confidence in using it to kick us on to Duna, and possibly even slowing into orbit at Duna. We will have to see just how much we want to trust into that. There we go, we've burnt through the fuel at last, and we jettison both the decoupler and the unnecessary secondary decoupler, which for some reason appears to be attached to the spacecraft, and fire up those 4 nuclear rocket engines. Much lower thrust, of course, on the nuclear rocket engines. However, they are much more efficient. These engines apparently also only use liquid fuel, therefore all of the oxidizer stored on board this rocket is a complete waste. However, it did help to add to the weight of the vehicle, which is no bad thing. There we go, look, we have a polar orbit, a successfully and stable polar orbit between 779,000 meters and some other amount, which is unimportant at this stage because it is well within the tolerance levels of the scanner as we orientate the ship towards the anti-radial, I believe is the technical term, i.e. we point the antenna at Kerbin. We're getting some, is that heat buildup on the solar panels? It's not entirely clear. There are no Kerbinauts, of course, on this to be able to go out and investigate, but it should be fine. We are just going to activate the scanner and perform the orbital scan. Before we do that, we're going to try and open... Not that. We're going to try and open the scan, like the communitron here, whatever it's called. The communitron doesn't seem to want to extend. Transmit data, unable to deploy. Interestingly, the sort of high gain antenna doesn't seem to be working. So let us perform an orbital survey scan. It looks like one of the smaller antennas is able to transmit the science data. Look, there it goes, rising up 16%. Very good. The transmission is in progress. The other communitron, I guess we're not going to be able to test that. It would be nice to test a higher gain antenna in case, of course, that is important when transmitting across interstellar distances, or at least interplanetary distances. We're not going interstellar just yet. There we go. Look. Oh, wow. Survey scan complete, and Kerbin suddenly is ringed in little orange lines. What that means, well, the TV executives have no idea whatsoever. Meanwhile, back on the Wistar research station, the Kerbmates are instructed to attempt once again to perform a detailed surface scan or a planetary survey of some sort. Patlas Kerman has, of course, no interest in this whatsoever, being a pilot and not caring about scientific observations or messing about with telescopes. Juggly Kerman, however, has decided that she is going to lead this investigation. Lena Kerman has previously spent quite a bit of time on the science instruments, but after her weird incident when she was drifting away from the station, the Kerbmates have decided she is not to be trusted. And therefore, Juggly Kerman is going to take charge of this one. She reorients the station using her limited abilities to pilot the ship in order to point the telescope at the ground and activates the scanner. And we are getting data of some sort. Definitely lots of colourful and interesting data. However, what it means, nobody really has any idea. Wait a minute, there we go. Look, we're starting to see some detail now. It appears that actually the problem before was that we were trying to observe the sea, the Kerbin Sea, which apparently is not a very interesting thing to observe. As we drift over land now, the telescope starting to pick up images of the surface, of the various densities of ore distribution and all the rest of it. All very, very interesting. All sorts of stuff that we will be absolutely fascinated in when we arrive at Duna and we decide, and we have to decide on a colony location where we will actually land and set up our colony, because of course access to ore and possibly water and all those other useful resources, should they exist on Duna, of course, which is not guaranteed by any stretch, as none of these observations have actually been performed at Duna. The narrowband scanner appears to be providing very little useful information. It may be because it is pointing out into space, or there may be some other reason. At any rate, it seems like the planetary survey camera is the better tool, and probably the one that is going to be made use of when it actually comes time to map out the landing point, which may well be Juggly Kerman's job when she gets there. So she will spend the next few weeks or months, however long she gets to spend on orbit, familiarizing herself with the camera and generally engaging in other tasks that will be rewarded with snacks. Meanwhile, of course, there are further exterior jobs that need doing, and so Gemby Kerman is going to have to go out once again in order to attach the rest of the camera equipment, batteries, and other bits and pieces that were brought up from the ground. And so Gemby Kerman sets to work once again, successfully attaching a couple of battery packs and then moving on to attempt to fit a probe core to the station, which was sent up in order to allow the TV executives and producers below to engage in remote control of the Wistar research station, as that was a function that rather foolishly was left out originally, but there doesn't appear to be anywhere that we can actually fit it. Gemby Kerman, of course, resorts to her usual tactic when she is frustrated, and she finds something and blows it up. Unfortunately, when she attempts to attach the probe core in place of the extremely expensive scanner that she just detonated, she finds that there is in fact no node there to attach it to, so it was a complete waste. Of course, the scanner was useless anyway, as it was in the wrong orbit, and so nobody is particularly bothered, and it does of course mean that the Kerbmates will have a better view out of the cupola module now when they are performing their scans and doing other bits and pieces. Anyway, Kerbin Duna, undeterred, goes on to attach various cameras and other pieces of equipment, lights, refueling nodes, and so on, before finally returning to the station and reboarding. Thus ends the second mission in the Duna 1 and a bit program, and the TV executives below couldn't be more pleased, ordering many extra snacks to be given to the Kerbmates to reward them for their performance. There have been thrills, spills, and even a few chills. But how long can their luck hold? And of course, the Duna 1 and a bit mission will continue as we rush towards that first epic launch to Duna. Next up is testing the colonization systems and modules, as well as re-entry systems, both critical to a successful establishment of a colony on the planet Duna.